Hi guys, so I'd like to show you the refit or restoration I spent a lot of time on this past winter. Now for those of you who don't know Obelix, she's a 1973 Alpen Ballad, and the Alpen Ballad is a 30-foot racer cruiser sailboat built in Sweden. Well, by far the most of them are built in Sweden. There were a couple built in Denmark, but yeah. And Obelix has hull number 332, I believe. I've always found sailboats to be absolutely fascinating, but it wasn't until recently that I found the time to start taking lessons. I hadn't been sailing for more than 2 months or so before I knew that I wanted my own boat. So I started doing a lot of research. What sort of boat did I want? What sort of boat could I afford? And sort of instantly upon seeing the Ballad, I fell in love with it. It's a very beautiful boat, and it's got very beautiful lines. And the best part was it's got a stellar reputation for being an extremely seaworthy and stiff vessel. There are quite a few that have crossed the Atlantic, and I believe even 1 or 2 have circumnavigated by now. And it turned out that if I could find one that needed a bit of work, it was within my price range. 3 days after seeing the listing for Obelix, I was aboard for the first time, and the day after, she was mine. Now sadly at this point in time I hadn't discovered how much fun it is to do these little YouTube videos, so I don't have a lot of video. But I do have some photos. Obelix wasn't in the best of conditions down below. There was some water damage and quite a few places where the outer veneer of the plywood had been worn through. She was at that point in time 40 years old, and it definitely showed. The upholstery wasn't that nice either. The wiring needed replacing. There were many small dings or scratches in the gel coat. There were signs of water leaking through the deck hull joint. The old insulation was hardly hanging on. In fact, the foam material had turned into some sort of nasty dust. I started removing the old plywood, one piece at a time. There was quite a lot of dirt and some strange items aboard, including one red sock for some strange reason. After 3 weeks, this was what she looked like. All the plywood had been removed, with the exception of the large starboard side bulkhead, which was too large to fit through the companionway. Then came the absolute worst job: removing the glue residue and bits of foam left over by the old insulation material. I won't ever do that again. It was a horrible job, but this was a turning point. From there on, I started rebuilding instead of tearing down. I chose to use a good quality Ukume plywood. Now this is the exterior grade stuff. I could have used the marine grade stuff, but that is horrendously expensive here in Denmark, and it turns out that the original plywood in the Ballad, which had held up pretty well, wasn't marine grade at all, with the possible exception of the large bulkheads, and those were in excellent condition. I could simply just refurbish those. Started tracing and cutting new pieces of plywood. It wasn't long until I could do the first test fit using a combination of new and old pieces. As soon as I had cut the last piece of plywood, I sanded the interior of the boat and started prepping her for paint. She started to look real nice, and check out the contrast between the painted and the non-painted area. I converted my living room to a workshop and started painting and varnishing. There was a lot of painting and varnishing, but I got through it, and early this spring I was able to start putting it all together. There was one messy job left: insulating the inside of the hull. What a mess! But now Obelix is insulated with 15 millimeters of closed-cell foam insulation. Then, suddenly, Obelix was ready to go back in the water. Now there were still quite a few jobs left, replacing all the wiring, installing a lot of new gadgets and so on, but she was back in the water. Now if you want to see the final result, I suggest you check out the video called Tour of Obelix. I'll put a link in the description, and I'll put a YouTube annotation over here. That's it guys, thanks for watching, and please hit subscribe and feel free to leave a comment.